Thank you. We'll start the introductions a little bit. My name's Theresa Liewer, Theresa McCormick Liewer. I happen to be mostly Irish, but I married a good German boy, so that's it. I am a member of the Iowa Genealogical Society. I've served as president and a couple other things there. And I moderate some interest groups that we meet once a month. We used to meet in person only, and then COVID had a bright spot in the fact that it drug us kicking and screaming into the 21st century. So we now meet via Zoom, which means we have people wandering in from all over the place. And one of my best stories is, probably in April, no, maybe earlier than that, a woman joined us and she started to talk and I went, "You're not from here." She was from Brisbane, Australia. And she has been in contact with this library. Yes. She has, and she's going to be here in early October. She's going to start in Council Bluffs and come through. Her family, her ancestor went to Australia, but his brother and sisters came to Davenport. And so she was researching here. So it's really kind of fun.
Unfortunately, she won't be here with us at our October meeting, but hopefully she can come visit us.
Yeah, so she's doing that. So we have people that join us. So that's the Irish one. I also do DNA. Another woman and I moderate DNA, and then I moderate a software group called Roots Magic. I don't know if any of you use Roots Magic for your personal stuff. And then, but I've been doing Irish research for probably, I hate to think about this, a long time. My first trip to Ireland was in 95, so I know for that. So, and it's been amazing for those of you who have done Irish research, what the changes are since 1995 or in 85, even I guess I do have some correspondence then. The internet has made all the difference in the world. And the Irish do understand that if you know where your family is from, you're more likely to come visit Ireland and leave some tourist dollars behind. So they have worked very hard to get their records online, and generally they're free. And, there's a few that we would like to have done and they haven't gotten around to it, but they are there. So for those of you that know where your family's from, then you can kind of skip this first part. But then you'll get into maybe now that you know where your family's from, there's some records that you would like to go see. I'm going to ask, how did you know where your family was from? Somebody?
I have some written history by a fellow in Kansas City.
Topeka,
Kansas, rather.
Okay.
And when he was a teenager, he wrote it as a class project.
Okay, class project. Somebody did that. Anybody else?
My mom.
Your mom?
She was from County Iowa.
Oh, well. Hello, we might be cousins.
Cool.
So his mother's from County Iowa, so that helps. Anybody, letters, birth certificates, death certificates?
There was a ship's list.
A ship's list, okay. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to go through, that's one of the things we're going to talk about is how to figure out where your family's from. Because if your family is John Ryan from Ireland, it's not going to work. It really isn't going to work. So we need to narrow it down to a county at least. And then hopefully we can narrow it down even smaller geographical area. Even if you never quite find exactly where your family's from, it's still worth a trip because it's just a beautiful place. It's just a really nice place, as long as you don't have to drive. So I have stories about driving. I'm not doing it again. So we're going to talk about Irish research. You notice my family is from County Tipperary, Armagh, Mayo, Wexford, Sligo, Leitrim, and then I have one fellow I just have no idea where he's from. Okay, it's just the way it is. Didn't leave a lot of records behind. And some of those other ones, it took a lot of digging to find them. And so I'm very pleased about that. Okay. So first, consider a DNA test. How many have done a DNA test? Okay. That's all right. Good. Your ethnicity, basically on Ancestry, your ethnicity is your ancestors 500 to 1,000 years ago, which really doesn't help a whole lot. 1,000 years ago, we aren't doing genealogy. But they also create with a journeys, which is much more specific. It's based on your DNA results compared to other people's DNA results and what their trees say and what your trees say. So, I mean, it's not quite as specific. It's not quite as scientific in terms of DNA, but it is pretty, let me tell you, it works. Okay. So So we get patterns that they see in your DNA matches, and they see birthplaces in this matches tree that matches your birthplaces for your ancestors and so forth. And they do, they frequently update it. And right now they have 203 Irish communities. That is the most communities for a country that any country as we go through there. So if we were to look at mine, this is an older screen. They've tasted a bit. My origins say I'm 54% Irish. If you click on that, it says anywhere between something and something percent, and that's kind of where they've landed. My communities or journeys, Munster, Ireland, which is North Tipperary. Yes, that's where my Howes and McCormicks are from. Leitrim and Sligo, that's where the Kinneys and apparently the Irvins are from, which I didn't believe. Leinster, the Wexford, the Bulgers are from there. And then North Connacht, that's County Mayo, that's where the Barretts are from. And I have documentation saying that's where those people are from. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. So, okay. A friend's journey. Hers is so specific. It's not only County Clare, it's Doonbeg Bay, which is like a 15 square miles. Okay. And she's been able to find records in Doonbeg Bay, their parish. And yeah, that's where her family's from. So isn't that amazing? It's really nice. It's really well done. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is how many of you heard the story that all the records were destroyed? Okay. Yeah. You heard it. Okay, there was a fire in 1922, and it destroyed the Public Record Office, is what they call it. At that time, they called it the Public Record Office. Now it's the National Archives, okay? It was the Civil War. It was the Free Staters against the Republicans, and one or the other, I can't remember which one, took over the Public Record Office, the four courts, and they stuck munitions in it, and the other side, finally, after so long a time, got fed up and they lobbed a few shells that way, and they picked papers up miles away, okay? And unfortunately, we did lose a lot, but we didn't lose everything. So otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I'd just send you home, okay? Basic things to remember: there's no right way to spell your family name. Do not obsess about that. Say it out loud, and if it sounds right, then it's probably okay. I have my maiden name is McCormick. There were 6 children baptized in Ireland, and they spelled it 3 different ways in that parish. They dropped the MC off, they put an ACK, they put an AC, they put an ICK. So that's it. So you just need to be flexible about that spelling name, and we go from there. Be cautious about accepting stories. I hate to say this, but our Irish ancestors or our Irish family members have been known to, shall we say, exaggerate a bit. Okay. Okay, and they romanticize it. Not everybody had to leave Ireland because he fell in love with the landlord's daughter and, had to come. Okay. The other thing is that Irish immigrants are notorious about getting their birth dates wrong. We know that oftentimes they were illiterate in terms of reading and writing, but they just didn't do math at all either. So the first time I hired a professional researcher there, I gave them the birth dates that I knew for the 5 of his children. And when they found him, he said, we couldn't believe it. Every one of them was right. Generally, we'd go 5 years one way or the other. Okay. Because what happens is we obsess about it. We've got a driver's license. We've got a birth certificate. They don't have that kind of thing. What they know is they were born the year that the landlord's oldest son was born, or they were born the year that we got a new minister or priest. I was born the summer after the big wind, which was a hurricane that hit in the 1830s. That's fine if you're still in the village. You come to America and you live in Chicago, they have no clue what you're talking about. So it's kind of a hit or miss as we go through there. If you know, generally they'll get the month right, okay? But the year is up for grabs, okay? Most of our ancestors were poor tenant farmers. Let's just be honest about it. Their leases were at will. In other words, it was an annual lease that was renewed. They didn't leave a whole lot of records, the kind of records that here in America we would look for. We'd look for land records because they came to America and they bought land because they could do that. The census records are destroyed, so we can't find them in the census records. Records before 1800 are really hard to find. So I don't know if I've got anybody here whose family came in the 1700s. Any of you? Yeah, that's hard. It's really, really hard to do that because, You don't have records in America necessarily, and you don't have records in Ireland, which makes it a kind of a black hole of research. And then, like I said, go to Ireland, even if you don't know. So that's it. Now, I meant to bring the book itself. If you want to buy a book, and on one of my handouts, it's the very first item. It's called Tracing Your Irish Ancestors by John Grenham. John is in Dublin. He is kind of the guru of Irish research, funnier than all get out if you ever have the opportunity to hear one of his presentations, and he's a little irreverent. This is the 5th edition. I think it's up to 600 pages, but it is in paperback. It probably run you somewhere around $30 if you want to buy it on Ancestry. It has, at the very beginning, it talks about all the different records, chapters on each kind of record you have, and then he's got chapters for every county and what's available and so forth and so on. That's why he keeps adding on to it. It's twice the size as the first edition because he's got more and more stuff. He's got some websites, all sorts of things. He actually has a website, which is another one I've given you, johngrenham.com, which basically has the same information as the paperback. There is a price for that, and it's an annual fee, so you might as well just buy the book. And although he updates the website, so it's 6 to 1, half dozen the others. You want to do that, but it's really a good book. And I if you're going to do some Irish research, that's a good way. If nothing else, you probably should have one here in the library. That would be a good thing to have. Dip into your treasury and see what we got. The other thing I use is called the SEPS. It's the Irish Genealogical Society International out of St. Paul, Minnesota. The International makes me smile, but they put a quarterly publication out that's quite good. It's quite good. And I think membership is $40 a year. So and they have a nice library. Their library shares with the Minnesota Genealogical Society and several other ethnic groups. Okay. So where do you start? What county in Ireland did your family come from? Okay. Now, family tradition may have the correct answer. I have a good friend that her family talked about before they came to America. They got married in Queenstown at the cathedral, and the first child was baptized there. And she spent forever, going through the cathedral records and go through the records. Well, there are indexes coming online, so I just put the family name in there and the kids and so forth. It turns out it wasn't Queenstown, it was Queens County, which is now Leith. Once they became independent, there was a Kings County and a Queens County. When they became independent, those are gone. So it became Offaly and they became Leith. All right, so the story was close, but not quite. Okay, because we did find it. We found all the kids baptized there. We found the marriage record and everything else. So you need to be careful. Sometimes the tradition doesn't translate as well it should be. If you have a really unusual surname, that can pinpoint a spot. You may think your family's name is unusual, and it turns out it's not. Kidney. I thought that would be a very unusual name. If you're from County Cork, there's a good chance you're a Kidney, as you go through there. But I have another one that their name was Cubit, like Noah's Ark, Cubit, Cubit, comes from a very, very small spot up in County Antrim. And that's the only place you're going to find cubits. Okay. So if you have an unusual surname, that might help. Okay. But the key is there's hopefully a record here in the United States that will have the answer of what we're going to look for. Okay. So what do? You do good genealogy. You're going to document all the events in your Irish immigrant's life. You should know everything that he ever did, because somewhere in there may be exactly what you're looking for. So we're going to look at naturalization records. We're going to look at church records, baptisms, marriages, and deaths. We're going to look at vital records, births, marriages, and deaths. We're going to look at obituaries. We're going to look at gravestones. Now, the community my family is from does not have a tradition of putting the Irish birthplaces on there, but there are other places, other communities, that's what you did. Okay. Now, sometimes it's very creative in terms of the spelling. And then a friend of mine found one in the gravestone. It was like the great uncle. He said he was from County Weatherford. I don't know how to tell you that, but there is no County Weatherford. So we don't know if it's Waterford or Wexford, but it's in that area. So we go from there. So the gravestones are there. Military service and pension records, especially the Civil War. Okay. You're going to look at passenger lists. Unfortunately, most passenger lists just simply say Ireland. But there's a chance. I always say you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. So you're going to look at a lot of records and go, it's not there. Okay. County histories, you know, the big thick books they started doing in the 1880s. Now you had to have your family history written up in there, you had to pay for it. My family, that wasn't happening. I mean, they were living hand to mouth. But maybe the sister married somebody with money. Okay. And so they'll have a little blurb that, you know, he was married to Mary Ryan from da-da-da-da-da-da. And so you're going to do it that way. So that's one of the things we'll talk about in terms of expanding your thing. Census records. Generally, they just say Ireland, but I'm going to show you one where they actually had the counties on it. So kiss the frog, see what happens. Family letters. Okay. Do you have letters home from somewhere? Mine got sent out. My great-grandfather came in the 1880s as a young man, and evidently he stayed in contact with his older brother. No, he was the eldest, and somebody from the family stayed in contact with him, and then with my grandfather. And my grandmother saved that letter. It was during World War II, and all of a sudden, here it was. That I've got the youngest brother's name. I've got all this other stuff. So family letters, we can see what we can do there. There is a book called Search for Missing, a series of books called Search for Missing Friends. Okay. It's an 8-volume work done by the New England Historical and Genealogical Society. It is online at Ancestry. And what it is, it's a newspaper in Boston called Boston Pilot, where people published queries saying they're looking for information of, and then they will say, my brother from such and such, last known here, so forth and so on. And you're like, well, my family wasn't anywhere near Boston. This paper was evidently circulated all over the United States. And the index, it's indexed by names, and that includes everybody, who they're looking for, who's asking, so forth and so on. But it's also indexed by places in Ireland and places in America. So out of curiosity, I looked to see where my family ended up in central Kansas, okay, in 1859. There was an 1864 ad placed by 2 brothers in the middle of central Kansas looking for news of their cousin from such and such parish in County Clare. I'm like, I don't want to say that Dickinson County, Kansas was the end of the world at that point, but you could see it from there. Yeah. I mean, it had just been open for settlement and so forth and so on, but these guys put an ad in a Boston newspaper. So if you on Ancestry, just look for Search for Missing Friends, and you can see it. It's really amazing. So I have helped other people find their something about their family which gave them the clue to go back, because they're very specific about where the person was from in Ireland. And so they give you a county and a parish and so forth and so on.
Is that ancestry.com?
Ancestry.com. Yep. Search for missing. If you go into the card catalog and under keywords, put in search for missing friends, it should pop up. Okay. So you want to do this not just for your immigrant ancestor, but you want to do his or her siblings, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, the nieces, the nephews, everybody, because somewhere in there you're going to find some information as best we can. All right. So here's an obituary. This is my great-grandfather's brother, and it says William McCormick was born in County Tipperary on March 24th, 1856, died at his home, so forth and so on. I love small town obituaries. He was a member of the K&L of S, in which he carried $3,000 of insurance. They must have been really proud of that. They put it in there. The funeral took place and the hearse being followed by 70 carriages. So now I have a vision of William's obituary. So an obituary, we need, again, you have to be careful on all of these because the person that knew is dead. So this is going to be a family member giving the information. Here's a gravestone. This is sacred to the memory of Martin O'Connell, native of the parish of Clare in Galway. How confusing is that? And so all of a sudden now I know I can go to Clare, and I need to, that's a town land. I'll talk about that. I got to find the town land and then find out what parish it's in, but that's it. Published county histories. The birth of Edward Hines occurred in Acres near Ballyvaughan, County Clare in 1831. Pretty good, right? This is my great-great-grandfather's volunteer enlistment, County Tipperary, all right? He's also, he was entirely sober when enlisted. Evidently, there are boys that woke up the next morning and went, oh, wait a minute, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, yeah. Here's an American church record. Now, this was up to the priests. Some of them don't have this information. Catherine Brady is ex loco from the place of County Cavan, Hibernia. Hibernia being the Latin word for Ireland. So now I know that Catherine was from County Cavan. All right. This is my death certificate for my great-grandfather, and it says Andrew McCormick and Bridget Gleason are his parents, but it just says Ireland, so that doesn't help me any, okay? This is William, the one that had the insurance. This is his brother, my ancestor. But his sister says Tipperary. Also has the parents' names on it, but it does say Tipperary. So, like I said, if you can't find it there, look and see who's going on. And how do I know that's his sister? She came to the funeral. Small town newspapers always read the social news, especially when there's a funeral involved, because they will talk about sisters and brothers and cousins and so forth and so on. Okay. Here's a 1873. It just says they came from Ireland. That's all I get. I'm not getting anything else. The later they came, you get a lot. Now here's a 1919 passenger list, and it talks the last permanent resident, and it also asks for the place of birth. It's a lot of information, all right? Your family probably came earlier than that, okay? But maybe not. Well, yours, whose mother, yeah.
My great, whatever grandfather
Okay.
came in 58, I think.
Okay, came in post. So, I mean, if you've got somebody that came, the key is sometimes it's like your family didn't come, but the Irish did chain migration. We talk about chain migration now. And that's how my family ended up in the McCormicks ended up in Kansas City, because the married aunt and her family were in Kansas City. So then 5 of their nieces and nephews on the McCormick side came, and 2 or 3 of them from the Fogarty side came. And then the next generation, there were more nieces and nephews. I think the last one was 1908 of all the family. They came, stayed with aunts and uncles, stayed with cousins all the way through there.
What if
So,
they went to Canada before they got here?
oh, we're out of luck coming through Canada, because the border was open until 1894. There are no records of coming from Canada to America. And my family did do that.
Yeah, that's the way mine went.
Yeah, that's it. So they came in there. So if they didn't stay very long, they just, hit the ground running and came on down. They may have stayed there long enough to have a baby or 2 or something like that, or get married, but there's no records. The border between United States and Canada and the United States and Mexico, there are no records until the 1890s. As we go through there, the border was basically open back and forth. Okay. I'm going to give you a tip. If you do find the family on a passenger list, look to see where the ship originated from. Okay. Liverpool was the #1 port of departure. They took a local ship over and got on a boat in Liverpool, but then oftentimes it stopped in Queenstown, which is Southern Ireland. But if it came out of Londonderry or Belfast or Limerick, and Belfast and started in Queenstown, they probably came from somewhere close to that. I mean, you would not, if you lived in Northern Ireland, you probably wouldn't come down to Queenstown, and vice versa. You would find it or you go over to Liverpool. So I'll go from there. Okay. Now this is a very unusual census record. It's I can't even see what I'm doing here. It says I'm screen share. 1860. And you notice we get down there, Donegal, Ireland, Galway, Ireland, Donegal, Cork. I can't read that last one. I think it's Sligo, Ireland. I think the census taker was Irish. I don't know why I say that, but he was interested in where they came from in Ireland, so he filled it in. So you should find your family in every possible census, whether it's the federal or if they're state ones, to go with that, because you just never know what you're going to find there. You find other relatives living with them that maybe a brother. Oh, a brother. Now I've got another place to go. So you're going to do that. Okay. Here we go. come here. What's going on here? This is a World War I draft registration. And there were 3 drafts for World War I because they extended, they changed the ages and so forth and so on. So I don't know if this is the second or third one. This is the only one that asked where your father is born. And in this case, his father was born in County Cavan, Ireland. That is the only place that we found that. And so then, and his father was William Cooney. And I looked for William Cooney in County Cavan till I was blue in the face. This is another thing I should have mentioned earlier when we were talking about names, or when you look at church records. They Latinize the names sometimes. Do you know what the Latin word for William is? Guilliamus, Guillemius. And when it was indexed, they indexed it that way, and they don't have an algorithm that says, oh, that's the same as William. Okay, I finally found William. Finally found him as we go through there. But James becomes Jacobus. Ellen becomes Helenum. And there is if you use Family Search and their wiki, they have a research wiki, and you go into Ireland, they do have a list of common Irish first names and what their Latin equivalents are. And then did you know that Bridget has multiple versions of the name? Bridget is also called Bedelia, which then becomes Delia. So all of a sudden you see somebody with the first name Delia. She's Bridget. Of course, she can also be Birdie, Bridie, and Biddy too. So Bedelia or Delia, so that becomes an issue. Dermot becomes Jeremiah. All sorts of odd things as we go through there. So those are the kind of things. So if you're not using the Family Search Research Wiki, you should. So just go in under the Research Wiki. It's search. The very first thing is search. Get a drop-down menu. It says Research Wiki. Click on that, and they have a search box and write in Ireland genealogy, and then you're going to get all sorts of information. And I think there's someplace you're going to find that name list as you go through there. So that was my whole thing. We found William Guilliamus. Jeez. Okay, and then thoroughly research the extended family. The children's birth and death certificates may have a parent's birthplace in Ireland. Same thing with nieces and nephews. Later passenger lists, obituaries of siblings, cousins, anything you can find. If you have hit a dead end, you need to expand your search. Okay. There is a traditional Irish naming pattern, but we can't agree quite what the tradition is. All right. The first part we do, and the Germans do this too. The firstborn son is named after the paternal grandfather, and the secondborn son is named after the maternal grandfather. Okay. And then the daughters, in theory, is named after the paternal grandmother and the maternal grandmother, but there's always exceptions. One of the problems is, you may have a child that was named after his paternal grandfather, and he dies as a toddler. So you don't really see anything in a census record, and they're going to use that name. So they recycle the name. Okay. So all of a sudden you get a fourth boy whose name is the paternal grandfather. And you're like, that just doesn't work. Well, that could very well be why. Okay. They were going to have a child named after that ancestor. And so if one dies, they just keep using it. I've seen it where they ended up with 3, child death rates were pretty high. Okay. So I use the naming pattern every once in a while. But the problem is you get to a small town like my family's from, we've got Michael and his brother Thomas, and they all have they all name their firstborn son Michael. Okay. And then all of a sudden, which Michael is it? And then Thomas, we get multiple Thomases, so they have in this small town that are all born about the same time. And so they have to distinguish them. We had Blacksmith Tom, and we had Thomas Vincent, who's TV, and so forth. Gentleman, it was Gentleman Tom. So when you get a bunch of people that stay in the same small town, and the naming pattern comes back to bite you. Okay, so you need to learn the basics of Irish history. I'm not going to do much of that, but it will help you understand why your family left. Okay, it helps you why certain records will or will not be available to you or don't pertain to your family. And you need to know some geography. So you need to understand Irish political religious subdivisions. Okay, so we talk about provinces. That's like saying you're from the Midwest or from New England. All right, there are four of them: Connacht, Leinster, Munster, and Ulster. Okay. Occasionally there are things that are kind of organized that way, but for the most part, it's just you're an Ulster man, you're a Munster man, that type thing. Then you have counties. Now, first of all, remember Ireland is the size of Iowa. Okay. So now, and you're never more than 100 miles from the ocean, which I think is interesting. But they have 32 counties, 26 are in the Republic of Ireland, and 6 are up in Northern Ireland, which is part of Great Britain. So totally different kind of governing as we go through there. Then you have baronies, which are kind of parts of a county, but they could cross county lines. And literally it's an Old English organization. They had a baron, some nobleman in charge, and that was the barony of such and such. So they use that in land surveys, some other documents. So here's our map of Ireland. And so you see the Leinster, Munster, Connacht, and then up on top you see Ulster, and you see some yellow X's. All right. What happened is there were originally 9 counties in Ulster. When 1920, when they chose to split to the Republic and then Northern Ireland, 3 of those counties chose not to go with Republic with Northern Ireland. So Cavan, Monaghan, and Donegal, although they were a part of traditional Ulster, became part of the Republic of Ireland. Just to let you know that. Okay. So, okay. You have civil parishes. That's approximately 2,500 of them. So think it's not a religious parish. It was originally, but it's a governmental unit. If you have to think of the parishes in Louisiana, they don't have counties, they have parishes, but there's about 2,500 of them. And they would have 25 to 35 townlands, which we'll talk about. And that's really important because a lot of the documents are done by the civil parish. So one of our problems is we see somebody that talks about they're from the parish, they're here in America, and on the gravestone, the parish of, and you're like, are we talking a civil parish or are we talking a religious parish? Because they aren't the same as we go through there. Okay. And then townlands, and this is what we're looking for. There are approximately 64,000 of them. They can be anywhere from an acre to 5,000 acres. The bigger they are, the less valuable the land was. It wasn't doing it. And they all have names, and they still use those names. And that's your rural address. So my family, my McCormicks, were from a townland called Gort Las O'Brien. Gort meaning field. So this was the field of Brian. And Brian Baru was from around there. I don't think we're related. And so if I wanted to write to the man that has that land, I would address it to Jack Egan, Gort Las O'Brien, Ballina, County Tipperary, Ballina being the village. They still use all those names. It's really kind of fun. Northern Ireland started to phase that out, and there was, shall we say, some immediate pushback because those are very valuable things. Okay. But you also have every parish has a grange. And so you got 1 million grange townlands in a county. You have to do that. But this is your goal, because if you can find where that townland was, you can actually go see the sacred pile of rocks that your family lived on. Okay. And I've been there. There's something about it. It's really cool. Okay. And then we also have what's called poor law union. These were to administer taxes for the poorhouse, the workhouse. The tax was on the occupiers of the land, many of whom were probably eligible to go into the poorhouse, but they took a market district and they just kind of took all the townlands in that area. But that also became, because they had the workhouse there, and once things got a little bit better after the famine, they had a hospital there, and so that's where they started. That was the registration district for births, deaths, and marriages. And that's where you took them to the supervisor there, and they recorded things. So we do that. And then I don't care about electoral ordinance. Okay. So then we also have the diocese, For those of you that are Catholic, you understand that. It's made up of multiple religious parishes. The boundaries for the Catholic and the Church of Ireland. The Church of Ireland is the Anglican Church. You may think it's the Catholic Church. It is not. The Church of Ireland is the Anglican Church, okay? And before 1858, surprisingly, probates and marriages were filed by diocese, especially probates. The religious parish, that's the one that we're used to as we go through there. And the Church of Ireland parishes are oftentimes identical to the civil parish boundaries because that was the original, that were the old parishes as we went through there. And the Catholic parishes are often larger. You know, during the suppression of the Catholic Church, they kind of fell apart when in the early 1800s, when they lifted the laws and so forth and so on, they were going to have a church, but they didn't have the financial wherewithal to have quite as many parishes, so the parishes tend to be bigger. So we get through there. Okay, so this is from John Grenham. He's got maps of the Roman Catholic parish maps, civil parish maps, and the poor law unions, which are always interesting to see. So we can do that. So if you go to the site map, if you go to him, and then at the top it says site map, and then you click that, and then you scroll down and you see the maps, okay, which are helpful. We'll go from there. And then he also gives you the place names, what townlands are in that parish, so forth. It's really a good book, okay. Other sources, I gave this to you. It's called townlands.ie. So I can go looking for that and see what happens. So this is my parish of Temple-a-Kali, the civil parish of Temple-a-Kali on the Shannon River, just up from Limerick, but it's in Tipperary. It tells me it has 33 townlands, okay. It's in the barony of Onion Era. It's in the county of Tipperary, and we got some other information. And I got that from, like I said, a website called townlands.ie. IE is the equivalent. It stands for Erie or Ireland. So if you see an Irish website, you're going to see IE on it. Okay, there it is. Okay. Select a name, see what you can find. Okay, so here's my, now this is my townland of Court Lass O'Brien. So I have clicked on it, it gives it to me. It's long and skinny and it's uphill. It's it tells me it's 990 acres. And my family's from right there. And right now this is all forested up here. They've turned it back into a kind of a nature preserve. Okay. It is the 145th largest townland within County Tipperary. Okay. This is a map that was James Ryan did. So this tells me here's my baronies for northern Tipperary. Tipperary is an oddity. It's the only one that's split in half. They have administrative for north and administrative for south. No other county does that. Typical Irish, they gotta make it hard. So here's our baronies up there. And then these are the civil parishes. And there are, I think, 79 of those. Okay. And you notice there's not a 90-degree angle in there. Right? For those of you who have driven, you understand. Okay, these are very old subdivisions of land. Okay, so we got 79 civil parishes in the northern half of County Tipperary. We have 34 Catholic parishes. Okay, so a little bit differently. Half of them are in Cashel and Emily diocese, half of them are in Killaloe as we go through there. So I always love this. My family's from the parish of Ballina, which is right across the river from Killaloe, but they're not in the Killaloe diocese. That'd be too easy. Okay. All right. So that's that. And then here is a map of the townlands of Temple-a-Kali. And so here we go. And here's my Gort Lass O'Brien again. And then we've got and those all names are still being used in that temple, in that parish. So we go there. So I already find the records, the official records, repositories. They have the public record of Northern Ireland. I gave you that. That's PRONI. That's the National Archives for the 6 northern counties. They had to start all over in 1920. And what they did is, because they were they had the archives down in Dublin, but they had to start over. So they have moved a lot of the records, official records from Dublin up there. But they also went out and they said, hey, Lord so-and-so, do you want to get rid of all those papers that you're having to store? We'll take them. So they have a lot of estate records for landed estates. They have leases. They have all sorts of things there that they have worked very, very hard to create. And they have some of the stuff that you don't actually see them, but they have them maybe some transcriptions and some abstracts of them, okay? Then we have the National Archives of Ireland. The National Library of Ireland has some other things. The General Registry Offices, GRO, they have them both in Belfast and Dublin. That's where you find the birth, death, and marriage records. I'm going to tell you the customer service for the one in Dublin stinks, but that's neither here nor that. And then you have the Valuation Office, which are the tax record. Two things you always have, death and taxes. And trust me, they kept on those tax records. So we'll talk about that just real quick. Here's a timeline. 1609, we have the plantation of Northern Ireland by the English and the Scottish Protestants, okay? What was happening in America about that time? Jamestown, okay? And we came and we took care of those pesky natives, and they did the same thing up in Northern Ireland, especially Northern Ireland, okay? But they did come from England as well as Scotland. They weren't all Scottish. And they pushed the native Gaels, Celts into the swamps and the mountains and everything else. And then they realized they had nobody to work their farms, so they brought them back. Okay. We got what they call penal laws. In other words, if you were not members of the Church of Ireland, there were a lot of restrictions, which we know that we always think about the Catholics, but that also included the Presbyterians because they were not Church of Ireland. So they in terms of owning land or passing it on to children, certain occupations you couldn't have, so forth and so on. So the penal laws were, the idea is we're going to get you to give up your religion and you're going to become Church of Ireland. Didn't work. Just to let you know, didn't work. I mean, for some people it did, but not so. Registry of Deeds was created, which was part of the penal laws because that was what they needed. They needed to record those deeds to make sure those Catholics were not turning their land falsely. 1821 is the first census. 1823, we have a tithe allotment. 1829, we have Catholic emancipation. They can vote, although they were very similar to England. You had to be land. You had to have land. Either own the land or have you leased had a long-term lease for a good-sized land. Which is, even though Catholics were emancipated, most of them couldn't vote. But nor could the non-Catholics because they just didn't qualify as we go there. 1845, we start with civil registration of non-Catholic marriages. 1847, the Great Famine. Okay, we got Griffith's valuation. We'll talk about that. No more of that. 1881, there was land ownership reform. In 1921, they split between the Free State and the South and the 6 counties. We have a civil war in the South because they are Irish. Give them a reason to fight, and they will. Okay, so we have a civil war. 1922, we have the fire in the Four Courts building, and in 1923, they create the Republic of Ireland. So that's it. But that's very good. So church records. They start relatively late if you're Catholic. The 1820s or later, okay? Urban areas may start in the 1700s. If you're in Dublin, they may have them, or Limerick or Waterford, but it's not that. John Grenham has county maps and lists of every parish, the years the records start and where the records are available. You can find them here, you can find them there, okay? And then I gave you your list of websites for similar parish information there. And the county heritage centers, this started in the 1980s when Ireland was, I don't want to say it was a backwards country, but it was a little bit. And so it was joined the European Economic Community, and they pumped billions of, we'll say dollars, into there to bring them up. And so one of the things they did, we're going to teach people how to do data entry and how to use computers. And so they went to all the parishes, the Catholic parishes, made copies of their registers, and the county heritage centers put them in and indexed them. All right. Trust me, they are Ireland is extremely technological advanced now, but that was their start. So they have these heritage centers that have these, and they will do research for you, okay? But they want to be paid for it. We want to do our own research. So I've used them to get me started, and then I'll go on my own. The images for these Catholic records are at the National Library. So I gave you that website on another one. It's registers.nli, National Library of Ireland.ie. But they're not indexed. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but I can see that. So, but there are indexes at Ancestry and Find My Past and Roots. Oops, that's Roots Ireland. I got that wrong. So they do have indexes there, but you have to pay for all of those. However, if you come here, if you don't have Ancestry, I'm sure they have Ancestry here, don't they? You can come and use theirs and find them. Now, what I find interesting is I can't find a record on Ancestry, but I can find it on Roots Ireland. I can't, it's like, are you indexing the same records? But they're a little bit different. So once you find that, then you can go look at the images, and then you can be very grateful somebody else indexed it, okay? And then Kerry, Dublin, and most of Cork are online for free and are indexed at irishgenealogy.ie, and I'll take you into that one as well, okay? The tourism board runs that, because the County Heritage Center for Kerry closed down. And they're like, well, what are we going to do with these indexes? Okay, don't let them die, we'll take them over. So what do you find? Baptisms, you get the name of the child, the date of the baptism, father's name, mother's maiden name, the sponsors, and sometimes you get the place of residence, in other words, the townland or the street name. Marriages, you get the date, names of bride and groom, witnesses, sometimes their residence again. Okay, death record, in church records of deaths very rarely exist. Every once in a while you'll find one, but generally you don't get it, okay? So this is why we're glad somebody else indexed these, all right? This is the original baptism in Rest Shul or Skull in County Kerry. That's hard. But the nice thing is they had local people index these, so they knew what names they were looking for, and we go from there. Okay, so the first one is Susan of Ferguson, Mahoney, and Mary Fogarty from, and there's the place. And then, but that's interesting. It doesn't give the, it was on the 23rd of September, but it doesn't give the, sponsors' names. That was interesting. Now, this is what I got from County Heritage Center before they were online. It was Thomas Howe, Hough. We changed the spelling to Howe when they came to America. And Ann Corboy, this is my great-great-grandfather's brother. On the February 8th, they do it the European way. So it's February 8th. They were married in, I know where it was. And then in the parish of Burr. And then we have children baptism for Michael and Mary. And it says graveyard underneath it. And I'm like, well, I think Michael must have died because he didn't make it to Canada with the rest of the family. But Mary didn't die. Why does it say graveyard? So I wrote them. Graveyard's the name of the street they lived on.
Oh,
So you got to know the local things. So that was it. The Church of Ireland, I don't know, any of you have Church of Ireland family? Not that you know of, okay, but they might. The urban records start early. You gotta remember, these are the people with money for the most part. The ascendancy is what they call them, but not all of them. Most start in the late 1700s. It was the established church. It was supported by the government until 1868, maybe. I think. And then it was like, no, you're on your own. And they're like, but those records are very important because these are the people with money. We need those records. You were a government unit. We need those records. That's how we prove marriages and legitimacy. So you should send them to the public record office where we can keep them safe. What happened to them in 1922? Burnt. Okay. Now, some parishes made copies. Other ones were able to convince them that we have a good place to keep them. But you lost at least a third of the parish records for the Church of Ireland. Okay. Some are online through that irishgenealogy.ie. Some in Cork and so forth and so on. But the other thing is, then once you had the Republic of Ireland, you had kind of a mass immigration of Protestants from some of these areas. And so the churches closed down. If the church closed down, it went to the representative church body library in Dublin. They have the records for over 830 parishes. They are now trying to digitize them and get them online, which is good to know. Parishes of other denominations, primarily Protestant, let's say Presbyterian or Methodist, may be recorded in the Church of Ireland registers to make sure that they were legally recognized, because legally a marriage wasn't official unless it was done within the Church of Ireland. Okay, they didn't care about the Catholics, but the rest of the Protestants, and you'll see where that comes into play later. They are more likely to keep the burial records because they may have the only cemetery in the area, and that cemetery then includes people of all faiths in that. There. And then you have vestry records. It's kind of like a parish council. They they're a little gossipy sometimes. People occasionally got called up and scolded, and they may exist where the record second, because they didn't send those in. So those may be there. Okay. Presbyterian Church, some of those records are back to the 1600s. Most belong in the early 1800s, very much like the Catholics. The Public Record Office, PRONI, has microfilmed almost all the registers in Northern Ireland, but they're not online. Okay. So hopefully someday, I don't know if there's some issues, because the original custodian of the records has to give permission, and maybe the Presbyterian churches aren't happy about that. So the records for, if you're a Presbyterian from the Republic of Ireland, those are in local hands, okay? And then there's a Presbyterian Historical Society, they might have them. And some are transcribed on rootsireland.ie, which I'll show you, and very few are online. I love Quaker records simply because, well, first of all, anybody have a Quaker family anywhere? Don't you love that? Don't they have great records?
Yes.
Okay, there's the Guide to Irish Quaker Records by Olive Goodbody. Is that a Quaker name or not? It is online at irishmanuscripts.ie. And she just talks about, she doesn't actually have the records, but she talks about the records and where to find them and so forth and so on. And she has some in there. But I love Olive Goodbody. God, I want to meet that woman. So let's talk about civil registrations. That's the registrations of birth, death, and marriages, okay? So, non-Catholic marriages begin in April 1st, 1845. Remember when I said it had to be in the Church of Ireland to be official? Mm-hmm. Well, you had a couple that got married up in Northern Ireland in a Presbyterian church. I think there was a child or two. I think there's money involved. The man left and remarried. And so obviously there was a court case on this one. And they said, sorry, that first marriage isn't valid because it was not in the Church of Ireland. You can imagine how that went over because this is a predominantly Presbyterian area in Northern Ireland. So they came up with a compromise. What they said is, you can, if you're not Catholic, you can be married any church, but you have to register it with the government. And so on April 1st of 1845, Protestant marriages are registered, okay? And then all marriages, births, and deaths are registered starting January 1st of 1864. That's pretty early compared to what Iowa was doing, okay? So you're going to find it. Now, you get 100% compliance right off the bat? No. But it was pretty good. It's pretty good, okay? The images are indexed and online for free at irishgenealogy.ie, which is great, okay? The marriages go from 45 to 49. They have a 75-year, and so every year they add another year. Marriages go to 1924 because they have a 100-year. And deaths go to 1974. Now, what happens, they're indexed from 64. For some reason, they can't get the deaths from 64 to 71 online. I don't know why, and it's been that way for years. They keep saying it's coming. So those images are indexed and they are online. So, I mean, if you've got a family member that we can make this work, it's great. So what do you get? The birth, you get the child's name, the date of birth, father's name and occupation, mother's maiden name, the residence, and the name of the informant. Marriage, date, name of bride and groom, residence, and occupation, their father's name. Hallelujah. Okay. And their father's occupation. And sometimes it will say deceased. Sometimes it's blank. If it's blank, that means they're probably deceased. But sometimes they give what their occupation was before they died. So we don't get that. The witnesses, you always want to know who the witnesses and where they were there. The death, you couldn't put less information on a death certificate. It gets the name and age of the deceased, the place of death, the place of residence, cause of death, and the name of the informant. No parents' names, no birthplaces, nothing. They were not in compliance with, United Nations has certain suggestions, strong suggestions on what should be on records. I think maybe about 10 years ago, they started putting some more information on the death certificates. Their attitude was, well, everybody knows where they were born. Everybody knows who their parents were. You're like, no, they don't. Okay. The records for Northern Ireland are online starting in 1920, 20, I guess, through the General Registration Office. Here is a marriage record from 1862. If this marriage is prior to 1864. So what does that tell you about their religious affiliation? What starts in 1864? Catholic marriages. So you know this family at this point is not Catholic because the marriage is in 1862. This happens to be my great-great-grandparents, Robert Haddon and Mary Jane Fryer, full age, bachelor spinster. Laborer gives me where they lived. He's in Keedybeg, the parish of Logilly, and she is in Carrick-Lowan, the parish of Killevy. And his father is Hugh Haddon, and her mother is David Fryer. David Fryer, I swear, is part of a witness protection program. Cannot find any information on that boy anywhere. Okay. And then we have, but they got married in the registrar's office. They did not get married in the church, a church of any kind. And so I asked somebody from Armagh that, and they said, could have been a mixed marriage. Could have been Church of Ireland and Presbyterian, or Church of Ireland and Catholic or something. And so they got married in the registrar's office. And then we have their signatures, their exes, and then who was their witnesses. Here's the birth record of their second son, which happens to be my ancestor. 22nd of November, John, male, Robert Haddon from Glassdrummin, which is the townland. Mary Jane Haddon, formerly Fryer, and he is a scutcher. John was a scutcher. He was in the linen. He worked in the linen mills. Scutching is where you take the flax, you soak it, which is retting it, and then you just beat it, and the outside comes off, and what you're left with is the stuff that you can make linen out of. Okay. And it was reported by Robert Haddon, father. Okay. So that's what we get there. So it's a little bit of information. And here's the death registration for Mary Jane and for Robert Haddon, just that he was married, he was 62, he was a general laborer, and what he died of, and Hannah Copeland, his daughter, reported his death. And then she died, she was a widow, laborer's widow, what she died of, and Lizzie Haddon, her daughter, reported her death. So not a whole lot of information, not like what we get in ours. Census records, they began in 22. Most of those were destroyed for various reasons, not just the fire. The 61, 71, 81, and 91 were destroyed because of a miscommunication with England. I have no idea. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I don't want to say anything. No conspiracies, but there are fragments that exist. So if your family happens to be from County Cavan, Fermanagh, Galway, Meath, and Offaly in 21, I have actually physically handled the 21 census, the book about this big in the archives, because they couldn't find the microfilm. I'm like, oh my Lord. And they bring this book that's 100 years old out, no gloves, no nothing. They just plop it down. Every time I opened it, the papers are going. I'm like, what is that? Okay. Partial for Londonderry in 31. In 41, all that survived is Killashandra Parish of County Cavan. We would love this. Name, age, sex, relation to head, marital condition, year of marriage, occupation, birthplace. Okay. We actually had somebody come to our Irish Indian group, and he knew, and he says, well, my family on the gravestone says he's from Killashandra. And I'm like, oh, you lucky son of a gun. And we found it. And then we told him to go away. And in 51, which is interesting, they also asked a list of the family members not present. In other words, they may have gone to America in the last 10 years, and those who died within the last 10 years. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Don't you? This is why we cry about 1922. We had a time machine. We know how we'd fix that. Okay. So we've got those. They're all been scanned and digitized. They're available for free on the National Archives, so we can do that. There are old age pension applications. They started with pensions about, I don't know, let's say 1810. If you could prove you were 70 years or older, you could get a pension from the government. Well, they didn't have birth certificates and everything else. So what you could do is you could take a request to the pension office, and this is prior to 1922, so they would look at the 1841 and 1851 census records to see if they could find you. And you gave them a little bit of information and they went looking for it. Those also have been scanned and put online at National Library. Okay. The northern ones are in book form. We have those. I think they're also. And then the ones for the Republic are on National Archives. Okay. Each family has a page So here's my Robert and Mary Jane Havin and Hannah Jane, Lizzie and Samuel. And they ask what your religion is. They are obsessed with religion in Ireland. I was going to Belfast to use the public record office, and I was trying to figure out the B&B to stay at. So I'm looking for maps. And here comes a map up that goes neighborhood by neighborhood and tells you what religion that neighborhood is. They are just obsessed with it. It's really too bad. The Swedes. Yeah, but they're all Lutheran. Pretty much. This one is not so much. Here's the extract of from somebody looking. It's Elizabeth Fryer, and I do believe this is my Mary Jane Fryer sister. Said that the full name of the father was David and Margaret Fryer, and I do know Mary Jane's father is David because that was on her marriage certificate. And they're in Bethbrook, which is right where their family's from. So it looks well. And so they were looking for him. Supposedly they were in the townland of Tally something or other, and I don't think they found it. Shall we say? Sometimes people weren't quite as old as they said they were, but boy, that pension made it good idea. Okay. We've got some, I'm not going to do these are early census. The Griffith valuation this was for the longest time all we had. Griffith is a man's name, Richard Griffith. He was in charge of this. It's a survey of property occupiers made between 1848 and 1864. They were kind of down in Munster with Tipperary and Kerry and everything else, and then they worked their way north. So it took them a long time. And they had a crew of men that went out and they surveyed everybody's property because this was going to be in support of the poor relief. Okay. So they would say, and the tax was on the occupier, not the owner. And so they would come and say, okay, where's your land? And they used maps that were done in the 1820s by the ordnance. It's kind of like our Army Corps of Engineer, but they were ordnance surveys. They are 6 inches to a mile. That is a very detailed map. And they would come out and they'd say, okay, what's your townland? Where are you? And then they would say this and so on the Griffith valuation, it has the townland name, the householder's name, the name of the landlord, description of the property, size of the property, value of the property, and where is it located on that original map. Okay. So if they have the same name, if you had John Ryan or Patrick O'Brien and two Patrick O'Briens that lived close by, Patrick O'Brien Mick was the son of Michael and Patrick O'Brien Thomas was the son of Thomas. We do that. But you also can have Patrick Red and Patrick Black because they had different colored hairs. That does not help in terms of genealogy. Okay. Each holding was given a number. The fields were outlined on that detailed map and the number was put on there. Okay. That number did not change for a century. So you literally can follow the ownership of that property as you go through there. So ask about Ireland.ie and we'll do that real quick. And this is one that's was printed, some are handwritten. And so you see there's on the far left, it's the map and letters of reference. And so you have John McKee, 9A and C. Then we have James Wood is at 10, Nathan Stitt, and then we have A, B, and C. So the property was 11, but there were 3 houses on there, A, B, and C. And those houses are marked, and the A, and the B, and the C is written on the map. So you literally know where the house is, all right? And so they probably, Owen and William were subleasing and paying Nathan Stitt for rent. Okay, so we go through that. You notice the representatives of Francis Cope was the landlord for all that. They would own the entire townland, the entire parish sometimes as we go through there. And then it tells you house and land, house offices and land. Offices mean outbuilding. Could be a piggery, it could be a cow barn, it could be anything, but they're not professional men with offices, so don't feel it. And sometimes they just had land as we go through there. And then here's my acres. This is the valuation, and then this is how much the property was worth that they were going to be taxed on. Okay, so they went out and they made notebooks up, okay, to value it. So they had the house books, and they literally measured the house and said, is it A, B, or C class? You know, is it mud? Is it straw? Is it got a window, that kind of thing. The field books, the size and quality of the land, was it good land, not good land, so forth. And then tenure books that shows the annual rent paid. So if you didn't own the land, but you had a long-term lease, that land was more valuable than the guy over here who every year could lose his lease. So we go through there. And those books are also all online at National Archives. So you could if you can find your family, you literally you can know what size of house they lived in, and you can see what kind of land they had as we went through, which is kind of fun. Okay. So here's a field book, and this is mine down here. Thomas McCormick, Catherine McCormick, Mary McCormick, Thomas Haddon, Andrew Haddon. They were kind of partnership as we go through there. And cold, shallow soil, 1/2 inclined to more is what they said about it. Okay. And then what happens is that was the start of the taxation of the land. And so they would continue it. So they had these books, and then they would come in and they got a new landlord. So they cross off the landlord, or so-and-so died and the son took it over. So they'd cross over that, or so-and-so left. And so they get kind of messy, and then they would have to come back, and then they start a clean copy. Okay. They cancel the old one, kept it, but started a new one. You can follow all the occupiers on a parcel up until the 1940s. So if you know where now your family might have left, your direct family, but a brother stayed on the property. So, I mean, it's kind of a good way to see what's going on. Okay. So the canceled books are available on film. We really want these done, and I don't know when it's ever going to be done. We'd like to have them online. Okay. And the ones for the Northern County of Ireland are available online. So my Robert Haddon, who was the scutcher, he actually lived in housing provided by the mill owner, and he moved periodically. Either the family got bigger or he made more money, and they were row houses, and he'd move here. He'd be in A sometimes, and the next time he's in K as we go through there. And then all of a sudden you'll see a lot of them stamped LAP, which is a Land Act purchase. We did some land, what am I trying to say? Land reform in the 1880s, because they realized that there was going to be a rebellion on their hand. And so they told the landlords, first of all, they told the landlords, this is what you can rent it for. Okay. And there's other restrictions. And then being a landlord just wasn't that financially exciting anymore. So it's like, we will buy your land from you. The government will buy the land, the English government, and then we will sell it back to the occupier on a long-term loan mortgage, very low interest rates. And that's a Land Act purchase. And so you'll see where, in fact, my family did do that. It had to be your property that you had been living on. Okay. The problem with that, these were small. My family lived on 10 acres. This is not what we call sustainable farming. So it didn't work out well. But what was interesting, they were long-term leases or long-term mortgages. Ireland became independent in 1922, and there was I am not sending my payments to London. And the government of Ireland just said, well, England, you're on your own. You go ahead and try to enforce it. We're not going to help you. So they walked away from a lot of that. Okay. But here's the canceled land book. You can see where names are crossed off and other people's names are written in, and so forth and so on. Down here, you got an LAP as we go through this. And over here, you have some dates that tell you when changes happened. Okay. And then the tithe allotment. This is the last one I'm going to talk about. This went from 1823 to 1838. First of all, you understand the concept of tithing. You gave 10% of your church would like you to give 10% of your income. That's a lot. In an agricultural economy, you literally gave 10% of your production for the year. So you gave your local minister, Church of Ireland minister, eggs, a pig, some wheat, and so forth and so on. And he had a barn, a grain barn, and he would gather that up. So it got to be a little awkward how you do this, and so forth and so on. So in 1823, they said it was optional. You could pay it in cash rather than in kind. And then in 1832, they made it mandatory that you paid in cash. This was a tithe on everybody that was in agriculture, whether you were a member of the Church of Ireland or not. So you can imagine how popular this was with the Catholics. Okay. So even though they had the rent, but they they defaulted on their tithes a lot. And so then the government would send people out trying to, seize the cows. And somehow the cows were always gone when they got there. Don't know what happened to them. That one suspiciously over on my neighbor's plot looks a lot like mine, but that's not mine. Okay, they spent a fortune trying to collect this, and they decided this is not working. So in 38, what they did, they made the assessment on the owner of the land. Okay, who in turn jacked up their rent because they had a lot more leverage in terms of being able to collect it. So that's it. So we do have those records. Now, we generally wouldn't care about those if the census records had survived, but they didn't. But if you're not in agriculture, so if you lived in town, were a shoemaker, you worked in a linen factory, you're not going to be in the tithe allotments because it's agriculture production. If you farmed exempt land, a lot of land was owned actually by the Church of Ireland, so you didn't pay a tithe for that one. You were a con-acre worker, which meant you got a very small parcel of land in exchange for labor for the landlord. Okay, you're back and forth. And then sometimes it was done in a partnership, a Rundell system, and so you only have one name on it. There's abstract information on Ancestry.com. The Republic has scanned and indexed those on the National Archives, so we can find that. And then we have the tithe defaulters list, which my family was on. I do not think it was a political statement because they came to America and they still didn't pay their taxes. So that's it. But here we go. We got that one there. Okay. And then I talked about the county heritage centers, which we've got as we go through there. And I'm going to stop with that for now. I am going to show you a couple of those websites and maybe we can find some of yours. What am I doing here? Let's shrink this up and it's not working. Come back here. Let's see. Did we get asked about? Okay, ask about Ireland. This is the one with the Griffith valuation. All right, and we come down here and on the bottom, it says Griffith valuation. And they're verifying I'm human. I'm very glad to know that. Okay, so I can do it by place names or I can do it by name names. So who's got somebody that knows a little bit about where their family's from in Ireland? Yours.
I know that her name was Bridget. She was born in Carrickmacross.
Okay, but she will not be in here. She probably did not have a land in her name.
Okay.
So we need a father's name.
Her husband's name was Thomas
Thomas, okay. So what was the surname?
Birmingham.
Birmingham, Birmingham. I have a Birmingham married into my family. And Thomas, we'll try Thomas. And you gave, I need the county first.
I've seen it on the map.
Okay, let's just try Thomas, see what happens. And then I have the option of doing similar names. So I'm going to do that because maybe I spelled it not.
I think they left in 78.
Okay, so they should be in here. We'll see what happens. But the thing is, it could be his father back in 1860.
Could be.
So we're going round and round. Are we going round and round? I can't tell because I've got this thing up here. Search. Okay. I can't see what's going on because I've got.
That's okay.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's going round and round. This may take a little while. We'll see what happens. So I can put a county in there. Okay.
I know that there are some.
There's only 15 of them. Okay.
Some were County Monaghan.
Okay, up north. And I've got Mayo, Cook, Cork, and that's my 15. So I'm not seeing anybody there. That doesn't mean anything. It could be that if this is a young man, he does not have the land. It's in his father's name. Okay, that's a problem. This is not a census. This is, but it does include that, unlike the tithe department, it does include everybody. So if let's say they're in, I don't know. Let's pretend we've got Thomas. He's up here and he's in Carlow. I'm picking Carlow, but that's it. I can also, there's another way of doing this. I can search by place. And eventually, come on, take it back. Okay, you're gonna
It
make
seemed to me that it listed someplace called County Burren, but there's not a Burren.
Burns and Clare. It's a place in Clare. Come on, let's go back. Reload this thing. It's going to be one of those days. There we go. Okay, we'll do Ask About Ireland. Ireland. Let's ask about Ireland. So you can do it by place. So I can choose places here. And what was the name? Carrick? Can you spell it for me?
K-R-I-C-K.
Carrick, yep.
North McCraw.
Can you spell the last of that? Okay, we now have, welcome to Irish Place Names. Macross. And I'm going to put a second R in there. And we're going to see what happens. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yep, here we go. So we do have, and they're all in Monaghan. Okay. So now that we know that, we're going to pretend we're looking for a Birmingham. This is where we go. We're going to put in Birmingham and just the Birminghams. Birmingham. This is so small I can't read it. We could make it larger, but I'm going to say in County Monaghan. And there's Monaghan. And unfortunately, I don't know the parish for sure, so we're just, Cross McGlen. Well,
Remember the name of the church, it gave the church.
okay, we're just going to do this. We're going to say, give me Birmingham. We only have one. We have Mary.
Yeah.
And there we go. We have Mary and very close to what you're looking for. And what we have here. Yeah, Mary Birmingham is renting from the Marquis of Bath. I don't think he's coming around and collecting the rents. And she has a house, a yard, an office with really no value to the land, and the buildings are a little bit there, so forth. She really doesn't have any land. And so she would probably be a widow because it's in her name. She could be a single woman, but generally be a woman, a widow if she goes through there. So now we have that. And then you notice it says she's number 21 on this map. So if I go back, close that one okay, I can see the map. They have a map view. Okay, she's number 21. Let's see what comes up this. Now this is going to be an issue because you have to work your way through this. You should have done mine because then we get it exactly. I know it works for me. Okay, come on map. Come on map. Preparing your map, this should just take a moment, is what they tell me up there in the corner. So we want instant gratification. There we come. Okay. So we know it's somewhere in this block. Okay, that's okay. And so we keep, so we go through here looking for that place. And it's always here's Carrick. There it is. Okay. Carrick Macross. And she's number 21, which means she's probably Carrick Macross. We have 10C95, 10A, and then it includes this. She's in here somewhere. She's actually in the town, Carrick Macross. Now, they do have detailed maps of the towns that are even more detailed. Okay, but this is not going to show it, but we know that somewhere on one of these blocks is where she is. Okay, she's literally living in the city limits somewhere. Okay, does anybody else have somebody? No? Okay, I'll show you mine.
Well, I just know my maternal grandmother's last name, and that's it.
That's it. We need a place.
Arma.
Oh, what's the last name?
Markey. It's Markey.
Okay, we can do that. We can do Markey. Markey. And we're going to say they're in Armagh. Let's just see if we get any Markeys. Armagh. Search. Yeah, we do. We get 45 of them in Armagh. Okay. Now we need her father's name. That's important. Well, you'd be surprised what you might be able to find. She get married there in America, in Ireland?
No, she got married in this country, moved over here probably in the early 1900s.
Oh, well then her birth certificate, her marriage certificate doesn't have her parents' names on it? You gotta go find that marriage. Where'd she get married, you know? No? Okay, we're gonna make you do
I
genealogy.
know she married a Weigel, W-I-G-A-L, would have been my maternal grandfather's name.
Uh-huh.
But I've also heard it might be Vigo, like German.
Oh, yeah, it is,
Or
Weigel.
Weigel, I don't even know if Weigel's
Weigel's a German name, I can tell you that right now.
not Irish then.
No. In fact, my husband's family's got Weigels from Carroll County.
My mom was brought up Catholic, so,
Are they from Carroll County?
No,
No?
no,
Okay.
it's Rock Island County.
Okay, Rock Island, okay, because Carroll County, they got lots of Weigels. Okay, they got German Catholic.
Yeah, I should have said
Yeah.
other side of the river.
So, yeah, so we need to spend a little time and see what we can find a marriage record. And then we can find this, because you notice a lot of these are living in Newtown, Hamilton, which is but some in Keedy. Could be relatives, neighbors to my family and so forth and so on. But when was she born? About?
Well, my mom was born in 1920, so she's passed, years ago.
Okay,
So her mother would have been born
well, then we can make this,
around
we can do this then.
1900 or late 1890s or
Okay, this is our next thing, is let's go looking at irishgenealogy.ie, which is the civil registration of birth. What was her first name?
something.
I'm sorry, I put you on that.
No, that's right. We called her Nani, but that was that,
That's, yeah.
that's like grandma.
Yeah.
It might have been Catherine, because I think mom's name was Catherine, I think named after her mother, Catherine.
Okay, let's see if we can find Catherine Markey. And unfortunately, they don't let me do it. I'm gonna, by, whatever. Year range, we're gonna say 1880 to 1900.
Because
We're
my
gonna-
mom was the second born, my uncle would have been firstborn, so that would make.
Oh, I have to register. I have to tell it's me. John Grenham writes in Mickey Mouse, in case you're wondering. He says it's nonsense. I have to do this every time I want to look at it, but it's the law. Okay, so we get there. So let's see if Catherine shows up. Come on.
You have to click the box.
I did. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tick the box. They tick the box. You don't click the box. Okay, and let's see if we get a Catherine. Catherine.
If we've got my mom's birth certificate at home, then we could look out.
Yeah, that's it. So here's Monahan. I'm looking for something, Castle Blaney. That is not, I'm looking to see, what have we got? Nina is an Nuri. No, not Nina. I'm sorry. I want a Nuri. We have one in Nuri. Let's see what we get. And here we have Catherine Markey. And we click on that. And we can actually see it. Now, this may not be her, but she is more. And so we come down here and we see.
She'd been 29 when my mother was born, which possible, you'd think younger.
Yeah. Catherine, father is Michael Markey and mother is Mary Markey Mallon. He's a farmer and so forth and so on. So that might be yours. It may not be. We need more information, but if we knew her father's name or we knew her birth year, and again, we would always search with a little bit of wiggle room on those birth records. Then you can look at it and see what
I
happens.
checked with my brother, because one of us probably has my mom's birth
Certificate.
and that would show.
Yep,
a lot
it
more
would.
information.
It will have that information.
And her mom's.
And her death certificate, her obituary, all sorts of things may show up. Okay. So this is all for free. So, we can do all sorts of things. If these are births after 1864.
They show occupations on different things.
Yes, marriage certificates and death certificates and birth certificates give, majority of the Ireland was agricultural, but not all of it. Not all of it.
Everybody in my family, or at least 2 generations back, is a machinist or a tool and die maker. Or
Okay.
blacksmith.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's just no other trade.
Yeah, and it could have been a blacksmith in Ireland. Could have been some sort of trade as you go through there. But it could be they got to America and they said, we're going to try this and see what happens. Yeah. Okay. So that's the Irish. If I were to look at registers, National Library, I can put in a parish name. So if I put in my parish name, well, I can go over here and search a map. And here's Munster. I'm going to do mine. Here's my Tipperary. And we're going to make it bigger. And there's Ballina, which is where the family's from. And I could have looked on Ancestry and found it, but we've got it there. So here's my baptisms. And I can filter the dates. So I'm going to do that. I'm looking for a baptism in 1843. And it was May, I think. This is one of those things that drives you nuts. Okay, here we go. That, we'll make it bigger. And here is May. And this is the problem. This happens to be my great-grandfather. And his name is Thomas. And so they wrote Tam. Close enough. Or maybe that's Tom. I don't know. But I do know that he was born in May of 1843. And then it says his father is Tom, but his father's not Tom. His father's Andrew. Okay. And the mother is Biddy Gleason. Okay. And then I come down here. And this is the interesting thing. It says they're from Bracken. Remember, I said the townland's name was Gortlass O'Brien. I'm like, what's going on here? Of the 6 children born to this couple, 3 of them say Bracken and 3 of them say Gortlass O'Brien. But then when I look, so I'm going through all of the church records, parish records, and trying to find out who else was born in Gortlass O'Brien. I find a subset of all these families, not families, there may be 6 other families. They say Bracken as the birthplace. There is no official Bracken. But guess what? You look at the Griffith valuation, they all live right in a row in this area. So it's a subdivision and it's a local name, which nobody now even remembers.
Would that be what the Burren is?
Well, the Burren is a physical place in County Clare, and it's a phenomenal place. It's rocky and it's really cool. But it could be a townland. It could be very well a
I
townland.
couldn't find it listed as a county.
No, it's not a county. I know that. So it could be, if we were to go into townlands.ie, we could do that. Go away. We'll do this real quickly.
They went to the 26 county. I said, well, no, it's not one.
No, it's not one of those. So we need a little bit more. So here's my townlands, and my problem is I need a place. But where did we decide? They were Monaghan, right? So we'll go to Monaghan, and I can come down here and I can look at these. The first part was civil parishes, and then I come down here, and the next part, come on. The next part, come on. I'm going too fast, and they don't like that. And then the next townlands, and this is all the townlands in County Monaghan. And if I come down here and we start looking for Burren, which is probably B-U-R, it doesn't show up. Does not show up. But I think Burren itself, if I were to talk about it, B-U-R-R-E-N. I have a picture of my dad and my husband holding up a stone dolmuth, which is one of those things like this that they use. Okay, it's called the Burren in County Clare. And I'm just wondering, how do you pronounce Burren? But yeah, I'm not too sure. But Burren may be an Irish name for something besides the Burren, which is the famous one. Okay. So anybody else got a family that we could, because we're running out of time here, but so you're seeing what I'm seeing, because a lot of these things are free. You can get into it, or you can use Ancestry. And you just find interesting things about your family. There are newspapers online, but you have to pay for them. What's the website? Find My Past. I don't know if any of you use that. It's an English, England-based thing. They do have American stuff, but they have some Irish newspapers, and they have English newspapers, because you remember England was in charge of Ireland, so they get that. So, and they are searchable, so you can find some things there. Yeah.
Steady.
Well, I can tell you the Birminghams are from Blue Ball in County Offaly. That's my niece's husband's family is Birmingham, and they came from Blue Ball in County Offaly. I'm like, what a name. So Birmingham's not an unusual name. It is an English name, but it's not, you're
During
gonna.
the time of the troubles of the fort, England came over and took over some land.
Well, you gotta remember, the English first showed up about 100 years. The Norman conquest was in 1066. About 100 years ago, after that, there were a couple of, we'll call them kings, they really weren't, chieftains in Ireland that were squabbling among themselves. So one of them invited Henry Strongheart over from England. He was a Norman, to help settle it. Well, Henry settled it and didn't go home. And they brought a lot of Norman knights over. And then so you just had constant back and forth. King John named himself king, king of Ireland. We had various rebellions. We had William of Orange. Well, first we had Cromwell, and then we had William of Orange. And we had rebellions, and the Irish were never successful particularly. But every time, so after Cromwell came over, Oliver Cromwell came in the 1600s, they strongly defeated the Irish natives, and they confiscated the land. Okay, and they redistributed it, and the land was given to the soldiers as compensation, because they didn't have any money to pay them compensation. Well, these soldiers didn't want to go, particularly live in Ireland, but they sold their land. Okay, and so you have massive landowners who bought the land from the soldiers, but you had the Irish. They left the peasants on the land, but the owners were all shipped to Connacht, which was really bad. So you got that, and then we had William of Orange came in the 1700s with William and Mary. Again, we lost, and they flight of the earls and everything else. So the English came in a lot, and so you have them there as you go through. They brought Germans over. They brought Palatine Germans over in the 1700s. They settled around Limerick. So you have German names in Limerick, so you got a little of everything. It was kind of it was a polyglot, as we want to call about it. Okay. All right. I guess maybe, unless you got some questions. I know this is like drinking out of a fire hose. I'm sorry.
Appreciate all your effort.
But if you get yourself, and quite frankly, Catherine's got my email address. If you find your information, because I put you on the spot. Catherine will give you my email address. Send it to me, and we'll see what we can find. See if we can't get through it. Whether it's.
I wanted to be able to, when we would go to Ireland, I'd like to go and say, this is where they're from.
Yes, you want to visit the Sacred Pile of Stones.
Yeah.
And I have done that. Multiply. My poor husband, he's in the back now. He's been there with me, and we stood there with Jack Egan, and it's quite high, and you look down, and you actually can, in the far distance, you can see the Shannon River. And you look at it and go, it is very picturesque, but how did you raise a family of 6 kids on 10 acres, and survive the famine? I don't know, that's it. But it's worth the trip. It is just, and the roads haven't changed at all. I should have I'll show you that map real quick. Where is it? Where's Ask About Ireland? I lost them all. Let's get rid of some of these. But what's nice about Ask About Ireland, we will do this real quick, and then what's interesting is you can overlay a new map, modern map, over, let's say, Northern Tipperary, because I know they're there, and I'm going to say in the parish of Temple-a-Colley. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. They're very polite about it. We don't do well with names. The first time I'm over there, the lady at the B&D said, "Oh, what are you going to do today?" And I said, "Well, we're going to go up to the village of Ballina and then across to Killaloe." And she goes, "Oh, Ballina and Killaloe are very nice places." I'm like, okay. We don't, okay. Here's Patrick. Where's Thomas? Let's see if I can find. I got 73 people in this thing. Is this my Thomas? Let's see if this is him. Yep, this is him. Okay. This is a miracle. Okay. What they did is, here's Thomas McCormick and partners. So we have Thomas, Catherine, Mary, Thomas Madden. So those are the A, B, C, D, and E. That's the houses they lived in. The land, which was the 70 acres, was divided as possible. And we have a little genealogy here. Andrew McCormick, that's Thomas's son. Okay. And Margaret, that's Thomas's widow, have the first part. Then we have James McCormick, another Andrew McCormick, Michael McCormick, Catherine Madden, James McCormick, son of Michael, Thomas McCormick, son of Michael, and Andrew McCormick, son of Michael. So what happens is we have all these, I've got a little family history going on here. And then what we have is Catherine McCormick, the occupier was James, Mary McCormick, occupation Michael, these are his children. Thomas, occupier is Catherine. And then down here is the valuation is struck down, that one, that house is gone. Okay. So you don't see that very often. Sometimes you just get lucky. Okay, so where was I? Here, let's look at the map. I'm at the map. And you can overlay, and so you literally, the roads have not changed for the most part. So you literally can, if you find yourself on a good valuation, you can drive up to it and go from there. So we'll do this. They're preparing my map again. That'll be good.
A question about newspapers.
A question about newspapers, yeah.
My grandfather died in 44.
Huh?
He had his own factory. He got written up an article in some paper about it
Uh-huh.
because he invented a gun mount for the Navy.
Okay.
He was the only one who could figure out how to machine it. And he got a contract for it, but I've never found the article.
Newspapers.com, well, okay. You're my family's from Kansas, so I know this. You're very fortunate. The Kansas Historical Library did a thing with Ancestry and let Ancestry came and scanned and digitized all of their microfilmed newspapers. And they had an agreement that for the first 3 years, you had to be a resident of Kansas to see them for free, or have an Ancestry newspapers. Okay, but now anybody can see them for free. So you might call the Kansas Historical Library in Topeka and ask them how you do that. But if he died in 44, you may have a problem because copyright laws. And I think they stopped with the newspapers in 1923 because that's when the copyright laws come in hand. But you might be able to find somebody that give you a name of somebody that you could hire to find the newspaper article itself. I would do that. So here's this long skinny thing is Gertless O'Brien. Whoop, sorry about this. You notice here it is A, B, C, D, and E. This is my family's right here. A. It's gone. But the stone foundation was still there. So we go from there. But I can come over here and let's move you around. And I can put I can move this over. Okay, realize. I can put a modern map on top of it. And it doesn't look good. Sorry about that. It's not getting, Google isn't doing well with this, but I can move a modern map if it's done correctly, and I can actually see, the modern map on top of this. So, but for some reason it tells me I'm having difficulty. Huh?
It's a great team to play.
Literally. Jack Egan lives over here. I think Jack's dead by now, but yeah. And everything, and the other question, I love this. They say every field in Rock and Ireland's got a name. Okay. So I'm talking to somebody and I said, oh, my family's from here and everything else. And I said, they've been gone a long time. I said, when Andrew died and his daughter and her husband took it over, William Maher, we say Maher, they say Maher. Oh, William Maher. Oh, he's not from here. He came in from Barnago. William Maher died in 1888. All right. But Jimmy Sage remembers everything his dad ever told him. Okay. And there is a thing called Maher Hill, which was evidently up here, and they called it after this guy. And then I said, well, Madden Corner. That's the Madden Corner right here. They didn't know why it was called Madden Corner, but it's called Madden's Corner. Maddens haven't been there in 100 years either. So I think that was more than 100 years. So every rock and field has got a name, and there's a book out there. And that's why, so all those people I said were from Bracken, they all lived here. They all lived up in this area, which was kind of interesting, the subdivision. So it's fun. And sometimes you go there knowing more about the local things than they do. They don't really, they're getting more interested in genealogy, but for a long time, it was like, well, everybody, my family's been here forever, and we just know these things. A very large percentage of the population in Ireland now lives in the Dublin area. So people are like, well, my mom's from Donegal and my father's from Kerry, and we just don't go back. And now they are interested in genealogy because they are not living surrounded by the territory. So,
You were talking about you would try to find a B&B close to where you were going.
yeah.
How do you choose one?
You must know how I choose B&Ds. Used to be there was a book out, but you just go online and look for them and see if there's reviews and so forth and so on. I mean, that is the way to go. First of all, hotels are expensive, but the other thing is the local people are quite helpful oftentimes, and they'll tell you.
Just rent a car.
Rent a car and go for it. That works very well, doesn't it, Jim? Watch him sitting back there going, yeah, sure. And then you get the full Irish breakfast for, in the morning, which after about three days, you're like, I can't eat that anymore. Can I have cornflakes? I mean, it's sausage and it's this and it's a tomato and it's eggs and it's huge. It's just a huge full Irish breakfast. And then you have the full Irish nap. So.
But you don't need lunch then.
No, you don't need lunch, but you stop at the pub and have a lunch there, and then, and they don't, what was it? What'd you say? Oh, the clam chowder is very good, yes. Real butter and cream and everything. What was I going to say? If you're in a restaurant or a pub or anything else, they know you're American. First of all, they can hear you, but they also notice as we eat, we do the thing with the fork and the knife and the back and the forth and everything else. And they don't approach you. But if you approach them, Katie, bar the door. They will talk to you for 2 hours. My cousin, he lives in Cincinnati, and they'll tell you what's wrong with our political things, and they love talking to you, but they will not approach you. They will not, badger you and so forth and so on. But if you show any interest whatsoever, you'll know everything they ever want to know about them. So that's it. They like us. They like us there. They like our money too, but that's neither here nor there.
Because I don't like the packing and unpacking every day on the bus.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah. It's not, the tour buses are hard. So yeah, this is, although there's a lot of, they have good trains. So you can take trains across the country from, let's say, Galway to Dublin. But once you get to Galway, if you want to get out in the countries, you're going to have to rent a car.
Sure.
And then it becomes even more exciting. So that's it. My brother was so excited. He says best day in his life. We turned that car back without a dent. Buy the insurance. Actually, they make you buy the insurance. They are not gonna, there's none of this, my credit card. Nope, you buy the insurance and you're in trouble. So that's it. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, that was fun, and everybody, we didn't let anybody online talk, but that's okay.